Hey, what's up, guys? This is Dr. Enoch Kotei, the primary care physician you can trust, breaking down the topics you care about in a way that you can understand. And today we're going to talk about 7 huge mistakes that diabetes patients make. So stay tuned. There's no doubt that managing diabetes is a very complicated thing to do. It takes years of hard work from the patients, education, and support from friends, family, and healthcare professionals in order to really get it right. So it's no wonder that along the way, there are tons of mistakes that could be made. But in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the more common ones that I see in everyday practice and ones that are actually easy to fix as well once you kind of discuss them and highlight them with a patient. So the first huge mistake that I'm going to talk about is patients only checking their fasting sugars. So a common scenario that I see in clinic is when a diabetic follows up with me and I take a look at their logbook, or I discuss their blood sugars with them, it looks like their sugars have only been in the 120s to the 140s, maybe 150s at the highest. So things are looking good, but then I check their A1C and it ends up being elevated or above goal. So they're surprised and I'm surprised as well because it looks like the sugars have been controlled, but then it turns out that they've only been checking their fasting sugars and they've not been checking it after a meal. So it's important to make sure you do that as well because we need to make sure we know how high it gets 2 hours after a meal, because if it's getting, above 200 at that time, then it might mean that we need to either take a look at the diet and how many carbs you're consuming, or see if we need to adjust the dose of the medication. So a common mistake that I see type 2 diabetics who are poorly controlled make is that they hold off on insulin for too long. So, when type 2 diabetes, you can be on pills, on oral medications and try to control it. However, some people have high A1Cs, 8%, 9%, maybe even 10% or higher, and they're on oral medications already and are not controlled. So in those cases, it's a good idea to consider being on insulin to help control your blood sugars. However, when I discuss this with some patients, they don't like the idea of being on insulin and they say, "Oh, doc, just please give me a few more months to continue to work on lifestyle and diet and exercise, and maybe these pills will start kicking in and start working for me," and so forth. So we do that, and when they come back 3 months later, everything is worse still. Things are just getting worse and worse in terms of the diabetes, and nothing is working in terms of the medications we have them on. So the reason why this is dangerous is because when you have type 2 diabetes, when you start out, your body is not responding to the insulin that you're making. And that's why you take pills, because those pills help you respond to the insulin that your body is making. You become more sensitive to insulin. However, after a while, what happens is that when your sugars stay high for extended periods of time, your pancreas, which is the organ responsible for making insulin in your body, ends up saying, "You know what, there's too much sugar here and I'm working way too hard trying to make all this insulin," and eventually it burns out and your pancreas stops working. So essentially, your body is not making its own insulin. So you become somebody that needs insulin as well, just like a type 1 diabetic. So one way to avoid this is by controlling the diabetes or attacking it up front aggressively so that your sugars can be down, your pancreas can kind of work at normal pace, so that it doesn't burn out eventually. Because some of those patients, what happens is that when their pancreas burns out, you definitely need insulin and oral medications don't become an option at all. Whereas if you just would have been on insulin on the front end and got everything down, then you could have maybe transitioned over to pills. Now, another huge mistake that diabetes patients make is that they buy juices in the store and they are encouraged by the 3 words, "no sugar added." But in fact, there is a lot of sugar in those things. As a matter of fact, they have natural sugars from the fruit that's inside of the juice. So they have many grams of carbohydrates in them. I'm gonna flash on a few examples here. So right there it says no sugar added. So let's take a look. On this one, we have 33 grams of carbohydrates per serving. 33 grams of total carbohydrates. No sugar added. No sugar added. Now this one has 30 grams of total carbohydrates in one serving. And the serving is usually about 8 ounces of juice. And the list goes on. So you can't be deceived by that, because when you look at the back of those, on the labels of those juices, you'll find that they have many grams of carbohydrates inside of them. Now, water is always the best policy, but if you absolutely have to have something with some other type of additional flavor inside of it, it might be best to get one of those packages that have the flavor packets inside of it. And look for the ones that say no sugar or 0 grams of carbohydrates. And look in the back to confirm that it literally does have 0 grams of total carbohydrates. And there's really a whole variety of these drinks. You have Crystal Light. 0 grams of total carbohydrates with them. This brand is Total Lime. It's about 3 grams, so 1% total carbohydrates. So these boxes with these flavor packets, they can be very tasty. It's an alternative for just drinking straight up water, and they're very low in carbohydrates. Some of them don't have any carbohydrates at all. So definitely a good alternative if you really have to drink something other than water. Now, another huge mistake that I commonly see diabetics make is they don't eat 3 meals a day. The reason why that's a big mistake is because when you don't eat 3 meals a day, if you just eat 1 or 2 meals a day, then this really slows down your metabolism. Your body needs to see those carbs and have a mechanism by which they actually go ahead and try to attack those carbs, break them down for energy. But if they're not seeing them 3 times a day, then your body's just going to slow down, and the rate at which you break down those carbohydrates or those sugars in your body is just really going to slow down, and that's going to lead to weight gain at the end of the day. Another reason why it's important too is because sometimes what happens is that, especially patients that are on insulin or the mealtime insulin that they're supposed to be on 3 times a day, they say that they don't take that insulin 3 times a day because they don't eat 3 meals a day. So basically you're missing 1 meal, and essentially you end up missing insulin, which can actually end up lowering your sugars more, but you're not taking it because you're not having a meal. And that's a mistake as well, because at the end of the day, even if you missed a meal, if you're not getting the insulin, then your body's still not going to regulate itself, and you're going to end up gaining more weight because your metabolism is slowed down. And because you don't have that dose of insulin in you, your sugars are going to go up. Even if you just get in some kind of a snack for one of those times, or just kind of like a small meal, a small portion meal, that's still better than, having nothing at all. That way your body is seeing something and breaking it down, using it for energy and still metabolizing, so it's staying in that mode. And also that will enable you to take your insulin as well if you're just eating at least something small. So you got to keep that in mind. For patients who use an insulin pen, one common mistake that we see is that when they press down on the button to administer the insulin, they don't hold it down for 10 whole seconds. Now, the reason why this matters is because if you don't hold it down for 10 whole seconds, you're not going to give it enough time to squeeze all that insulin out through that needle so it can go into that layer under your skin. And therefore, you won't get the whole dose of the insulin. It can lead to poor control. So it's important to hold it down for 10 whole seconds, just like this. And then you may release. Another unfortunate mistake that I've seen many diabetics make is that they fail to get proper foot care for an ulcer on their foot. Now, whenever you have any kind of breakage in your skin or an ulcer as a diabetic, it's already more difficult for you than the average person to have that heal over time. So it's important that anytime you have anything like that, you seek medical attention, whether it be from a primary care doctor or a podiatrist who's a foot specialist, right away, so that we can come up with a proper plan to make sure it doesn't get worse. If it's an infection there, you might need an antibiotic. You might just need a certain adjustment, a simple adjustment, such as just an insert into your shoe to make sure you don't have as much friction on that area where you're getting this breakage or this ulcer. Or, you might need to get it evaluated for things like bone infections, because sometimes an infection can go through the layers of the skin and into the actual bone around that area, and that can be a little bit more serious. So it's definitely important to make sure you don't delay care, because you want to avoid complications such as amputations down the line. Now, the last huge mistake that I'm going to discuss today is diabetics who fail to either establish care with or follow up with the eye doctor. When you first get diagnosed with diabetes, it's important to see an eye doctor right away, because many times when we diagnose you with diabetes, we don't really know exactly how long you might have had it for. you could have had it for longer than what we suspected, and therefore you could already be having problems developing with the back of your eye or the blood vessels in the back of your eye that can lead to serious complications down the line and eventually a loss of eyesight. So it's important to make sure that you establish care with an eye doctor right away, and then also when you see them, you need to follow up with them every so often depending on what the status of your eyes are, because if things are actually okay on one visit, things might not be okay down the line on the following visit when they take a look at your eyes. So it's important to always make sure that you're sticking to your appointments and seeing an eye doctor regularly to monitor for any complications of diabetes that have to do with the eyes. So there you go, guys. Those are 7 huge mistakes that diabetes patients make. If any of them sound like something you've done before, hopefully watching this video was a good learning experience. If you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe to Trust PCP. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. Thank you for watching. Peace out.